The Warning of 1984. Why Orwell wrote his most famous novel. George Orwell's 1984 is more than just a dystopian novel. It's a warning drawn from real-life experience. Orwell-born Eric Arthur Blair didn't dream up totalitarianism in a vacuum. He witnessed firsthand how governments manipulate truth, suppress dissent, and use ideology to control people. From the Spanish Civil War to the rise of Stalinism, Orwell saw the mechanisms of authoritarianism in action, and 1984 was his attempt to make sure the world never forgot. But what exactly did Orwell see that made him write 1984? And why does his warning still feel eerily relevant today? Orwell's wake-up call, the Spanish Civil War, 1936 to 1937. In 1936, Orwell went to Spain to fight against Francisco Franco's fascist forces, believing he was defending democracy and socialism. He joined a Marxist militia, the POUM, Workers' Party of Marxist Unification, but what he saw there shook him. Rather than a noble fight for the working class, he witnessed political purges, secret police operations, and the brutal suppression of dissent, not from the fascists, but from his own supposed allies. Stalinist-backed communists began executing their rivals, including anarchists and Trotskyists, accusing them of being fascist spies. Orwell barely escaped with his life. He later wrote, "I saw newspaper reports which did not bear any relation to the facts, not even the relationship which is implied in an ordinary lie. This kind of thing is frightening to me because it often gives me the feeling that the very concept of objective truth is fading out of the world." Homage to Catalonia, 1938. The idea of truth being erased and rewritten stayed with him and would become one of the core themes of 1984, Soviet censorship and the rewriting of history. Orwell was deeply disturbed by how Stalin's Soviet Union controlled not just the present but the past. He saw how entire historical records were altered or erased to fit the political narrative of the moment. For example, in the 1930s, Soviet photographs of early Bolshevik leaders like Leon Trotsky were edited to remove him after he fell out of favor with Stalin. Books were rewritten, and past political allies were erased from history as though they never existed. Orwell saw this as a blueprint for totalitarian control. This inspired one of the most terrifying concepts in 1984. Every record has been destroyed or falsified, every book rewritten, every picture has been repainted, every statue and street building has been renamed, every date has been altered, and the process is continuing day by day and minute by minute. History has stopped. 1984, World War II, and the rise of thought control. During World War II, Orwell worked for the BBC as a propagandist for Britain. This gave him direct insight into how governments use language and media to shape public perception. He saw firsthand how truth could be manipulated even in democracies through censorship and selective reporting. He later criticized the British press for blindly supporting Stalin despite his atrocities, simply because he was an ally against Hitler. Orwell saw that intellectuals and journalists were often complicit in propaganda even in the West. This experience led him to write, "Political language is designed to make lies sound truthful and murder respectable, and to give an appearance of solidity to pure wind." Politics and the English Language, 1946. The concept of newspeak in 1984, a language designed to limit thought itself, was Orwell's response to how political language was already being manipulated in real life. How Orwell's fears became reality. Orwell's warnings weren't just theoretical, they were based on what he saw happening. And today, 1984 feels less like fiction and more like prophecy. Censorship and thought control. Social media companies and governments now suppress dissenting voices under the guise of fighting misinformation or hate speech. Rewriting history. Political movements push to redefine historical events, erase statues, and alter school curricula to fit modern ideological narratives. Surveillance state. Governments and corporations track every digital move, just like Big Brother. Language as control. Words are redefined to shape thought. Equity versus equality. Misinformation versus differing opinion. Gender versus biological sex. Orwell saw the early seeds of these tactics in the 1930s and 40s. 1984 wasn't just a warning, it was an alarm bell for the future. Orwell's final message: the price of freedom is vigilance. Orwell wrote 1984 on his deathbed, knowing his time was short. He didn't live to see how prophetic his novel would become, but his warning remains. The choice for mankind lies between freedom and happiness, and for the great bulk of mankind, happiness is better. 1984. Orwell knew that comfort and safety often come at the cost of truth and freedom. The real question is, will we recognize the warning signs before it's too late?